Hi, everyone, and welcome to Dead to Rights, the podcast video for readers, writers, and the crime genre industry. I'm your host, Donna. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to be visiting with Caro Soles, who is the author of the cross-genre Merculian mystery series. And this is something that's quite different, quite unique. Again, her name is Caro Soles, so please look her up. But before we get to her, I've promised to do a quick announcement about our upcoming anthology, which is titled A Grave Diagnosis. And we are actively calling for submissions at this time. So if you've got a short story that you think would qualify for our anthology, please send it over to me at carrickpublishing@rogers.com. And in the subject line, be sure to say A Grave Diagnosis Story Submission. You'll find these submission guidelines at our website, www.carrickpublishing.com. I can tell you right now that the story length should be between 1,500 and 8,000 words, not to exceed 8,000, and that there must be a clear and present crime in the story. As well as an illness that plays a factor in the crime, either in the crime or in the solution somehow. So please do that. Again, that's carrickpublishing@rogers.com for the story submission, and say that Donna sent you. I'll look forward to reading what you send. Try and come up with some clever ideas. And now I bring you this public service announcement related to COVID-19, better known as coronavirus, which has spread throughout the world. Symptoms of this respiratory disease may include fever, cough, and shortness of breath. These symptoms may show up 2 to 14 days after initial exposure. If you are experiencing these symptoms and have come in contact with or are in an area with an ongoing outbreak, please call a hotline and/or consult a physician. Clean and disinfect any highly touched surfaces. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. Thank you. And now, without further time lost, here's Caro Soles. Good morning, Caro, and welcome to Dead to Rights. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So getting to what we were talking about yesterday, I know that you've submitted a story called Waiting in the Wings for the Grave Diagnosis anthology that's coming out in the fall. And I want to thank you for that. It's a wonderful story, and it features Marlo, who is in your new novel, Marlowe's Dance. And Marlowe's Dance, I believe, comes out in May. Is that right?
Yes, I wrote it down this time. It's May 19th.
May 19th. Wonderful. See, you had lots more time to prepare.
Yes, so this is good.
So tell us a bit about Marlo without giving away too much of your short story. Your short story is wonderful, and but I want to just hear about the character himself, Marlo.
Well, as you know, the story is set in the world of the Merculians, who are a very, so I always call them the pleasure-loving hermaphrodites of Merculian. They're very emotional people. And in this story, Marlo is an investigator with the Cap City regulators. This is the capital city. And he's an older character. He's older than ones in the other books, which I've written up set in this world. And what I wanted to do with him was, it's basically a police procedural. Something bad happens. There is a body. Somebody dies far too young for this world. And they call him in because they figure something's gone wrong. And so the character himself, when I was thinking about the character for the books, because he's featured in several books as well. And I was thinking of a sort of a noir detective, only not, I mean, he does walk alone. He doesn't have any siblings. He has few close friends. And he has this sort of high moral code, which is a problem in his line of work periodically. of course, he's not going to have the edge that the actual noir people do. So that was the interesting thing to me. I said, how would this work in a world of these emotional, theatrical, arts-loving Merculians? So Marlowe himself doesn't come out in the short story, but he loves to sing. And
Okay.
he sings he has a choral group that he sings with and has a lovely time with that and gets all emotional while he's singing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's sort of his one thing. And he likes them because they don't talk about their own work or anything else. All they do is talk about their singing. It's sort of like going to a book club. You don't really know much about these people. You just talk about the books all the time.
Exactly. So if you're an accountant, you don't have to go there and talk about accounting.
No, and everybody knows that who he is because periodically these cases get in the news, flashes and everything, but nobody ever asks him anything about it, so there's no problem. And so he likes that. And so this was my idea for the character. And he has a lot of these people who live on Merculian. They're, as I say, they really love their sensual pleasures, and they tend to overdo it with drugs and all that sort of thing. Alcohol. He doesn't really, but he overdoes it with food. He just loves food. So I can relate to this character.
Yes, yes. He would do well in isolation.
Oh, well, he'd have a lovely time. Yes, he doesn't particularly like to cook, but he just loves, you know.
Well, he's a very likable character. I really enjoyed him very much. And I do see him as a traditional noir detective in many ways, even though he lacks that really aggressive, violent edge, because being Merculian, he can't have that. But yeah. He still is very much a traditional noir character in that he moves through the scenes and the crimes with that microscopic feel where he's just taking it all in, you know, and you really are drawn to him. You like him very much when you read him.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that. Yes, he's a real observer, and he takes in, you know, these things.
So tell us about Marlowe's Dance a little bit, which is coming out May 19th. We know.
Yes, we've got that. Well, Marlowe's Dance, I don't know if you can see the cover back here.
I love your backdrop, by the way. Everybody
thank you.
Pay attention to the wonderful backdrop. And there is Marlowe's Dance, just off to the left of your screen.
Yes, that's the one. And well, this is the first of the Merculian books that Marlowe appears. And this one is technically a police procedural. It's all from his point of view, whereas all the others are not. There's shifting points of view. And he is basically, there is a horrible crime at the beginning. And Marlowe is going to see his nephew, niece, whatever the English word would be, there isn't one, who is in a competition, a dance competition. He's quite young. And the dancer, the young dancer who's favored to win this great competition, is found dead, all mangled up in a piece of the set, a large piece that they were going to use for the finale. So this is great shock to everybody, especially since the young dancer comes from a very well-known family. And so Marlowe has a great deal of pressure on him to get this wound up as quickly and without too much commotion, which of course he doesn't do, because you can't do that sort of thing. So that's, you know, he goes doggedly down what he thinks is the right path and keeps getting mixed up in things which are not the right path, but you know, that's the way it goes. He does eventually figure it out. So that's really what that book is about. It's an actual murder mystery. His name, by the way, his name is Marlo Dasha Bogardini, and the name is of course Marlowe from the noir character. Only they don't have W's in Merculian, so we don't have to worry about that. And Dasha was for Dashiell Hammett, and Bogardini was for Bogart, Humphrey Bogart. So I figured I got.
Of course. So you have them both in mind when
that was just for me.
That
you know?
comes through, Caro, and this is part of the whole writing process that I'd like to share with any viewers is that if you have a character in mind, you don't need to browbeat the reader with these comparisons. You simply have it in your own mind, and it will come through. It comes through beautifully in Marlowe. He really does represent those two figures very well.
Well, it was just something for me. I think a lot of writers do this. You put little things, little Easter eggs just for yourself kind of thing.
Yes.
In these things. And, you don't expect anybody to get it because it doesn't matter. It's just how
it doesn't matter, but it still does come through in some way. Even if the reader doesn't make the connection, they still have the same feeling of those characters. What I really hate is when you are reading a really otherwise good book and it introduces a character and it says, much like this other well-known character.
Oh, no.
You just can't be doing that, but you certainly can draw on those characters in your own mind,
Oh, yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've got another book coming out in the fall, and we almost missed it when we were talking yesterday. So let's talk about it right now.
I know. I got so into the Merculians, I totally forgot about this wonderful, obviously, I hope it's wonderful book, which is coming out completely different. Now, as they say, who was it used to say it? Now for something completely different.
Yes.
It's called, strangely enough, it's also got dancing in the title. I know people are going to get the idea that I'm a former dancer or something. I'm not if they've actually seen me, but if they didn't know me. Anyway, this is called Dancing with Chairs in the Music House. And it's historical, actually, because it takes place in 1949, which seems to be, I always think it's odd talking about a historical, which is in one's own lifetime, but nevertheless. It's from the point of view of a 10-year-old girl. And she and her mother, her family, they've fallen on really bad times. They were, quite well off. Anyway, they are now forced to move into 2 rooms in this rather genteel rooming house at 519 Jarvis Street, which is quite the big mansion. But they only get 2 rooms of it. And because she has a serious eye problem, she doesn't go to school. So she spends a lot of time alone and wanders around this big house, listening at doors and looking through windows and generally just checking in on things to see what's going on and trying to interpret what she sees, which of course she doesn't do very well. And eventually she sees something quite horrific, not understanding what it is. And she also meets the mother and son who move upstairs into a room on the 3rd floor. And she gets friendly with the young boy who's about her brother's age. Her brother's about 15 or something, 16. And he asks her to take a note to this mysterious friend of his at her church. And she thinks this is very exciting. You're not supposed to tell anybody, and this is very, very great excitement. And of course, that leads to complete tragedy. And can't tell you any more than that without giving too much away.
Dancing with Chairs.
Dancing with Chairs in the Music House.
And that comes out in the fall of this year.
That's September 15th. Yes.
September 15th. We know the exact date, so watch that. That sounds like a beautiful story, Caro. And I know that when it comes to beautiful stories, you really do have a wonderful touch. I don't say that just to blow smoke. Anybody who isn't familiar with Caro's work, Caro's all over the map in terms of genre. And you've got the Merculians, which are fun, loving, and wonderful and delightful people, but you also can have a little bit darker touch. And in our last anthology, In the Key of 13, your story title was?
Moonlight Sonata.
Moonlight Sonata. I highly recommend anybody read it. It's just got a beautiful, lyrical, wonderful feel to the writing, an excellent command of the language in traditional style of writers. And it is a murder mystery. So if you like murder mysteries, you're going to love it. So this is starting to touch me in the same way, just hearing you talk about it, that it's that kind of more lyrical.
It is very touching, yes. It's a very touching story because it's so clear she doesn't understand and what's really going on.
Well, I'm definitely going to read it, and I recommend everybody look for it in September.
It's coming out from Inanna Publications, by the way.
Inanna Publications,
yes.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Excellent. And you also have a book coming out, which is another Merculian mystery coming out in 2021. Can you tell us a little bit about that? You see, I
Oh,
remember I was listening when we were speaking.
I know, that's amazing. I see that one. We can't really see it behind my chair.
Not really. Can you tell us the title? It doesn't really show that well.
It's The Colony Dancers, it's called.
The Colony.
The Colony Dancers. And the Colony Dancers is a dance group of children, a children's dance group, which is just taking the Merculian world by storm. Everybody thinks they're just wonderful. They come from the Colony Planet, which is owned by Merculian, but they don't pay much attention to it. And so this group, this children's troupe comes to town in chapter 1, and everybody's just wildly excited, and they have this sort of procession in the town, etc., etc. But pretty soon it's clear that there is something very strange about these children and about this group. And one of the name dancers in one of the characters, Julio, who's in this, I think he's in the short story. It doesn't matter. I don't think I named him because there are too many names. There are a lot of Merculians have 3 names each, so it gets confusing sometimes. But anyway, he goes to congratulate one of them and touches them, and they are touch telepaths, these characters, so they can feel emotions from other people, not the thoughts, but the emotions. And he feels great pain coming from this child, and he's quite shocked. And then he discovers that this particular child wants to escape, and would you ask Julio for help? And Julio, being the impetuous sort, says absolutely yes. And it turns out that this child says that he is a sibling of Triani, who's one of the mega stars of the company, and not a particularly, loving type. So he's not at all happy to have this suddenly dumped on him, because first of all, he thinks it's a scam, and he doesn't really. So what on earth are you talking about? I don't have any relatives, I don't have a family anymore, and So, and then Marlo comes into it, and Marlo has a great memory for faces, and he has been working on a missing children's case for quite a long time on his own, because everybody gave up. It was 15 years ago. So that there's something about the face of one of these children that reminds him of one of these missing kids. So, but there's, it couldn't be. So it's that sort of thing, and it goes on and on and on, and eventually you discover more and more. And things get darker and darker. I think this is one of the darker ones in the series about the children. And then eventually Marlo has to do some fairly heroic things, which he manages with great deal of difficulty. And and things turn out relatively all right.
Good. So, yeah. And this story puts me in mind of a number of other actual historical stories. It's really... It's a very captivating concept, but very dark.
It is.
So
exactly.
it might be really for, it might come with a warning label.
Well, I don't think this one isn't that way. I mean.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I mean, some of the earlier ones are fairly dark too, but not in the same way. I don't know. There seems something, perhaps because it's actually these kind of things have actually happened, that it seems more worrisome or something.
Yes. And you can't give away too much of it too. What else are you working on right now, Caro? Is there anything else that you're currently working on?
Oh, well, I thought I was finished with these poor Merculians, but apparently I'm not, because I'm now about a third of the way through what I suspect is the last one.
Does it have a title?
It's called Marlowe's Painted Garden at the moment, because I had this wonderful idea of how he has a garden painted on his wall inside. There's a long backstory about that. But anyway, how this garden would be actually hiding a code. But the more I work on this particular story, the less that has to do with the story. So I don't know if that's going to work, but I might have to change the title. But there are other things I wanted to develop one of the characters from the Colony Planet, and then discovered I couldn't really do that without giving away too much of the book before. All of these books, by the way, they're standalones.
Good. So you can start anywhere, readers.
You can start anywhere if you start reading with Marlo. Yeah, I mean, you can start reading Marlowe and be perfectly fine. I think that's a good place to start because all of the characters are new to Marlowe too. He doesn't, he doesn't usually move in this world of big stars and first order Merculian families and all that sort of thing. So they're all new to him, so it's kind of fun to get another slant on things.
So it's really not necessary to pick them up and read them in precise order, which is good. It's really good, especially when you've got a full
collection. If you do, you'll realize, you'll get more because you'll realize what, for instance, in one book, I might say, one of the characters would say, oh, do you ever have nightmare? Do you ever have thoughts about what happened on the Wellington? And the other one said, God, no, it's too awful. I don't even want to talk about it. Which, of course,
that kind of thing just piques my interest. It just makes me want to go back and read the other one after. I'm not concerned about order.
But you can also see they do develop slightly, although some of them don't seem to, but some of them do. And, you know, they get a little older and do a little.
So there may be an overreaching back arc, but
really.
It's not necessary to each standalone.
No, it's only chronological. That's you know, they do move in time. That's all.
Yes,
but
yes.
At all.
Now, something occurred to me yesterday when we were speaking, and I didn't actually bring it up, but a lot of writers, and I'm saying this for our new writers who may be listening, a lot of writers draw on a general love of the arts. And I get this really clearly with you, Caro, that even though you're not a dancer, and I asked you yesterday if you'd ever been on stage, and the answer was no, but there's an obvious love of the arts in general through all of your work, everything from the painted garden to the dancing, to the singing, to, you know, can you tell us a little bit about how that love of arts just works its way into your prose?
Yes, well, I do love the arts, and I actually have been on stage, but not professionally. So I did a lot of theater work in my young days in the sort of semi-pro, you know, sort of way that one does at a certain age. And then, of course, you come to the point and you have to make up your mind. You can't do everything.
Yes.
So, you know, so I dropped it. But I didn't drop my love of going to the theater and supporting the arts. And I actually wrote a few plays. I actually wrote a couple of little musicals and, you know, all that sort of thing. Musical might be a slight exaggeration, but anyway, they did have songs. And so it's just always been in my life. And when I was growing up, we always went to the theater, we went to the ballet, we went to the, I was introduced to the opera quite early. And it's just always been there, and I love it. And it just feeds the soul all the time. So it just comes into my work a lot, no matter what particular that I'm working on.
Well, the reason I picked up on it so much is because Alec and I always had a thing where we love art, like paintings. We absolutely love paintings. Now, our primary focus has always been Canadian artists. I mean, we love them all. Alex, in particular, studied most of the Renaissance artists. And whenever we feel, either one of us, a little bit of a creative block, so to speak, we'll make the rounds of the art galleries, or we'll go out to the even to the auctions, even though we have no wall space anymore. But
I know.
Just looking at these artists, and I want to really emphasize this point for any new writers, because the thing I always get is, you know, can you make a living at this? Well, maybe you can, and maybe you can't. That can't be the real reason you do it. Yeah. And the artists, when I think about them, how so many of them really only acquired their notoriety or their fame either well into their old age or after their death.
Yes, exactly.
It couldn't stop them from creating beauty, you know? And thank God for that, you know?
No, you don't go into the arts to make money.
No. And if you happen to make money, great. That's wonderful.
More power to you. That's great.
But I'm never jealous of anyone who does, but I try to emphasize that point, that it's not the reason for what you're doing. And if it is, maybe you're doing the wrong thing.
Exactly.
You know? Accounting may be a better bet.
Sure, it would be.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Caro. Don't hang up the line, though, because I want to chat with you after we're done. But I just want to thank you very much. Caro Soles, watch for Marlowe's Dance to come out May 19th. That's the next one coming out. And then after that, we're going to be looking for Caro's story, Waiting in the Wings, in A Grave Diagnosis, which is coming out, I believe, October. And then we have we have, what is the name of the
Dancing
2021?
with Chairs in the Music House. It's a long title.
Yes.
Dancing with Chairs in the Music House in September.
Dancing with Chairs in the Music House, coming out in 2021. So thank you very much.
Oh, no, it's not.
Yes.
Dancing with Chairs in the Music House is coming out September the 15th this year.
September 15th. Excellent.
Yes.
So that's one to watch
So-
for. And the
No.
2021 is the Merculian dance. Is that right?
It's not. It's the colony dancers. We
The
don't have to-
colony dancers. That's right. Thank you. People remember better when you make a
There's such,
mistake.
I don't usually have so much coming out at once, it just happens for some reason.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate having you here, and I appreciate your second time joining me because of the technical issues yesterday.
Oh dear, yeah, that was
We learn as
Not
we
at all.
go.
I want to thank Caro for joining us today on Dead to Rights, the podcast. And you can find her Merculian Mystery Series on Amazon, certainly, or at any of your favorite retailers. And her name again is Caro Soles. Please look her up. She does some really exceptionally unique storylines and characters. I really like her character development. I want to give a special thanks, shout out to Ted Carrick, who provided the theme music for Dead to Rights, titled Eyes of Gold. And I really enjoy bringing that song to you. Now, next week, we'll be speaking with Blair Keach, who is a relatively new crime writer on the scene. He is wrapping up his first novel, and he also has a couple of short stories under his belt. And he's a very, very good writer. So be sure to look for him, Blair Keach, and join us next week on Dead to Rights, the podcast video.
A dusty road, a man alone. His vital signs go on hold. And I don't know what you've been told, but the years have turned my eyes gold. And I told you what you told me, we'd never be in the same boat for free. Yet it rides, let it ride.